Hi, I'm Jessica, and this is Truth at Home. Today I'd like to talk about what my experience has been as the only one who head covers at my church for 7 years. Now, I'd like to clarify that I do not cover full-time. I only cover while at the actual church service. And I cover at home, usually when we're reading the Bible together as a family. And those are the only times that I cover. So let's talk a little bit about what my experience has been like as the only one who head covers at my church for 7 years. First thing, I felt very lonely. So just one piece of cloth on my head, sets me apart from everybody else in a very visually distinctive way. And it would be nice to have other people that also head cover so I wouldn't feel so alone. But there's not, as far as I know. And, just going to church with that knowledge that it's just me. I'm the only one. It just makes me feel a little bit isolated, So that's been one of the struggles that I've had these past 7 years, feeling lonely. Another struggle that I've had is feeling like people must think I'm weird. I don't know if they think that I'm weird, but in my head, I think, oh, they must see me and they must think that I'm weird. Even though really I'm not, I don't think that I am, at least, but just that, excuse me, just that feeling, when I go to church, as I look at the people around me of, oh, they must think that I'm some kind of weirdo. It makes the experience more challenging for me, imagining what people must be thinking of me, that I'm obsessive, for example, that I obsess over details, which isn't entirely true. Yes, I like to be, I like to make sure I'm doing things right. I'm that kind of person, but I don't feel like I'm obsessive. I feel like I'm a pretty well-balanced person. Head covering isn't an idol to me. There's a lot of stuff going on in my life. And head covering is just one of those things among all the things that are going on in my life, So I'm not obsessive. I'm not weird. I don't idolize head covering. I'm not one of those people who is all into, conspiracy theories. And, I'm not one of those people who likes to be on the edge of everything and who's really extreme. That's not me. But I have that worry that people are going to see me and they're going to think that I'm that way, So that's my second, challenge, feeling like people must think I'm weird. The third challenge for me has been feeling frustrated. So as I look around me at the church, and, it's been this way for 7 years, being the only one who head covers, I look around at all the people and I think to myself, well, why am I the only one? I've studied this issue, I feel, pretty thoroughly. And it's been wonderful to find out the truth about this and begin to live it out. And I look at people around me and I wonder, well, they have a Bible too. If they wanted to study this, they could. Why aren't they? It's not like it's one of those issues that is as important as salvation. I don't think we need to elevate it to that level. God doesn't, but it's still important. It's in the Bible. right? And it has everything to do with symbolizing our roles, and being consistent with the way that we interpret the Bible. So I look at people around me, especially the pastors. It's been really hard for me to see the pastors, the leaders in the church, and think, to see them and to think, why aren't they on top of this thing? Why aren't they studying this issue and finding out the truth? Why are they letting all the people in their church think, oh, it's just a cultural thing? Why aren't more people seeking the truth? I have a hard time with that because I feel like I'm a truth seeker and I want to get to the bottom of things and I want to know what the truth is. And I feel frustrated with these people thinking, why don't they care? Now that's not to say that they don't. That's just a feeling that I have. And I want to make sure that I clarify that. It's just a feeling that I've experienced when I've been at church. I'm sitting there listening to the sermon. I'm looking around at everybody else. Of course, I'm still paying attention to the sermon, but the thought does cross my mind. Why am I the only one? Still, after 7 years, So it's been hard for me in those main 3 ways. Feeling lonely, feeling like people must think I'm weird, and feeling frustrated. Now, I'd like to talk about ways that I have dealt with those challenges. Some things that I've learned along the way during these past 7 years. So how have I dealt with the loneliness? Well, I've been online and I've found people that way. Not too long after I began Headcovering, I began my first blog, which was truthathome.wordpress.com, which is still online, so you can still view that. I'll link to it in the description box. And I began to write about Headcovering on my blog. That was a great outlet for me to just be able to talk about my beliefs and my experiences in a way that was non-confrontational, where people wouldn't feel threatened by me, where I could just be me, be myself, and say what I wanted to say. That was a great thing for me to do, I believe, to just have that outlet. And as I wrote about head covering, I would have people comment on my blog that would say, oh, I head cover too. So that was a way that I was able to start meeting other people. I also began my YouTube channel. And again, as people are, going on YouTube looking for videos about head covering, maybe they're not even looking for it, but a video pops up and they click on it, we've been able to connect, so I've met people who head cover that way. Another way I've met people who head cover is through the headcoveringmovement.com website. It's actually headcoveringmovement.com. And the founder is Jeremy Gardner. And very, very shortly after I began head covering, I discovered this great website. I think I've listened to, if not all, at least most of all of the sermons that have been downloaded to that website, where pastors have spoken about their personal journey to understanding the truth about head covering and teaching it to their congregations. And I love those sermons because I love the story behind how these pastors some of them didn't used to believe in head covering. They thought it's just a cultural thing, you know what I'm saying, which is what most people seem to believe nowadays. And they just really took this passage and they just took it apart and they studied it deeply, and they came to the conclusion, you know what? This theory about it being just a cultural thing, it's not entirely correct. Even though people have, for various reasons, covered their heads, not necessarily because the Bible told them to, when the Bible talks about head covering, it gives its own reasons. And these reasons have nothing to do with the surrounding culture. So as these pastors studied that, they came to realize, I've been teaching the wrong thing all these years. I've been believing the wrong thing. Why? Because I just went with what was easiest to believe and to accept, and I didn't really look into it that deeply, or whatever their reasons were. And then they began to teach it to their congregation, and they were nervous about it. They didn't know how people were going to react. Some people reacted well, some people didn't react well. But I just love those stories of how these men stepped out and made a stand for the truth about this issue. And it's so inspiring. On the website, the Head Covering Movement, are also many articles that talk about head covering objections. So if you want to know more about, the cultural viewpoint, for example, or whether your hair is the head covering, they have articles that address those objections. So that's a great way to reinforce your beliefs about head covering and to find people who think like you do through reading these articles written by people who believe in head covering and listening to the sermons. There are also head covering testimonies that women have given about their personal journeys to head covering. And again, it was something that they had to study and research, and they came to the same conclusions as the pastors. They may not have even gone to the same churches as those pastors, but they came to the same conclusion, which I feel the Holy Spirit was leading them to, opening their eyes to see the truth in his word that for some reason they weren't seeing before. So there's the head covering testimonies. What else is there? Oh, there's so much more on the blog. You have to check it out. If you would like to get involved with the head covering movement, you can comment on any of the articles. You can also leave your own head covering testimony. And you can see if there's a position you might be interested as part of the team who's, working together to make this head covering movement site, move forward. So you might be interested in looking into all of that, and I encourage you to do so. So those are ways that I've dealt with the loneliness. What about the issue of feeling that people must think that I'm weird? First thing, I've had to learn to not make assumptions about other people, right? So I don't want them to make assumptions about me. I shouldn't be making assumptions about them either. Maybe they don't think I'm weird, Maybe they haven't really given it a second thought. Maybe they see me and they say, oh, that's interesting, and they move on and they don't even think about it, And maybe I am imagining things that aren't even there, so I need to learn to not make assumptions about people. Another way that I've dealt with, feeling like people must think I'm weird is that I've just tried to be a very friendly person, so smiling and being friendly to people is a great way to show them I'm not really that weird, I am a likable person. I think I am. I try to be. I'm friendly, I'm nice, I'm approachable, I think that's important to help show people, that I'm not weird. Another thing that I've done is I've made sure of my why, so the pressure in society, in church society, to feel like we have to be like everybody else is strong, even for us adults. It's not just, peer pressure isn't just something that kids deal with or that teens deal with. It's something that we adults deal with, and we don't like to feel like we're weird and we're the only ones. We want to fit in with everybody else, right? So if we're going to do something, we're going to choose to do something that's different. We have to be really, really sure of why we're doing it. So for me, going back just continuously and reviewing my reasons for head covering has helped me to remain strong and to not give up head covering, even though I feel like, oh, maybe people think that, I'm a weirdo. I don't give up on it. I don't succumb to the pressure to try to be like everybody else because I feel embarrassed or I feel awkward, because I know why I'm doing it. And the reasons why I'm doing it are very good reasons. And I'm sure of it. I'm confident, So that confidence helps me to move forward, even though I do feel awkward and out of place at times. I should say most of the time. Rarely do I forget that I have a head covering on my head. Rarely. Because it's there. Okay, how do I deal with being feeling frustrated with the people around me? And honestly, this is something that I have continuously had to deal with. It's been a really big struggle for me. Honestly, I don't want to sound like a judgmental person, but honestly, this has been a really big struggle for me. Looking around me and seeing other people who don't head cover and thinking, why haven't they studied this? That's been probably my biggest struggle. One of the ways that I dealt with that is just praying for them. God says that our battle is not a physical battle, it's a spiritual battle. And we wrestle against spiritual powers. And I believe that the reason why more people have not studied the head covering issue and the related issue of how that, relates to our roles is because we have been partially blinded by the enemy to not understand this issue clearly. I don't have time to go into this subject very deeply, but I do think that there is a partial blindness that is causing people to not want to look into it, to prefer to remain ignorant, to prefer to fit in and not be different. I think one of the biggest reasons is feminism. I think it has a lot to do with feminism. Before feminism, women wore head coverings. This is my viewpoint of it, but I think there's a basis for it. After, feminism had radically changed our culture, women stopped wearing head coverings. Why? Because we know what the head covering means instinctively. We know that it's a symbol. Instinctively, we just understand this, that when a woman covers her head, it's a symbol of her not being in charge. And women don't like that. Women in our society, and speaking in general, want to feel like they can do anything. They can be an authority. They can be pastors. They can be, whatever kind of leaders, and that they can do anything that a man can do. Now, I don't want to seem to be, a bigot or something, okay? But as a Christian, I believe that God has created different roles for us. So women are equal to men in value. Men are not better than women, okay? I'm going to make that super clear. Men are not better than women. And I'm not saying that men are smarter than women. I'm not saying that either. I think that women can be very smart and very strong internally. However, God has created, in his design for the human race, he's created two distinct roles. There's the man's role that God gave him, and there's the woman's role that God gave her. The man's role is to lead, and the woman's role is to follow that leadership. And feminism says, why should we have to follow men's leadership? Why can't we be the leaders too? And that's what I'm saying. Instinctively, we know that the head covering is a symbol of women submitting to the leadership of men. And in our culture today, we are very opposed to that. Even in church culture, we have a kind of an icky feeling sometimes when we are confronted with a head covering, and it just seems weird to us because our culture has been totally saturated with feminism. And I believe that it's that blindness created by feminism in our culture today that makes it so that people are unwilling to dive deeper into this issue because it's just too much work. It feels too weird, and it's, you know what I'm saying? So praying about it is really important so that God can help people to take that cover off of their eyes and see his word as he meant it to be understood, and that he would give people the courage and the faith to follow him, even though it makes them look a little weird. You know what I'm saying? So prayer is important. When I pray, sometimes, yes, I do say, God, I'm so frustrated. Sometimes I'm angry. I hate to admit it, but yeah, sometimes I am. I'm angry, and I'm honest with God. But at the same time, I don't leave it there. I say, God, I don't want to be frustrated. I don't want to be angry. Help me, Lord. Help me to be patient. Help me to have love in my heart for those around me, because I know that that's what you want for me. Help me and help them, Lord. I know that you love them and you want them to know the truth, and I don't know why it's taken so long. But I know that this is important to you because it's in your word, and you want us to understand the truth and live by the truth. And I know that for a certainty. So I'm just going to keep praying, Lord, and I'm just going to trust that my prayers reach your ears and you care about my prayers, and that even though I don't see it right now, you are doing something. You are answering my prayers, even though I don't see it right now. I have faith that that's true. Okay, so praying is the first main way I've dealt with that frustration. Another way is just by being a joyful example. So yes, internally I feel frustrated. Externally, I try to show a joyful exterior. I try to show, like I said before, people that friendly, smiling attitude. Being joyful, I think, will draw people in, hopefully, whereas being sour-faced and kind of serious probably won't, So I try to be joyful. Also, I try to just focus on my walk. So yes, I do pray about people, but in the end, I have no control over them. I try to focus on me and my walk and obeying the Lord in the best way that I can, and just not worrying about other people. I pray for them, but I try not to worry about them. There's a difference. Okay, and then the last thing of how I've learned to deal with the frustration is just by being patient, learning to be patient and long-suffering. So, after 7 years, you can imagine how much practice I've had in learning to be patient and long-suffering as I'm dealing with the frustration of seeing people around me who aren't head covering and they don't appear to be interested in it. And I feel like I still haven't really learned how to be that patient, but I'm working on it, and God's working in me. And I think it's an important lesson that he's teaching me, that I learn to be patient with other people. It's very, very important. Okay, so that's how I've learned how to deal with being the only one who head covers in my church. Listen, if you have a story you want to share, go over to the head covering movement and share your story, share your testimony. I also invite you to go over to my blog, and I talk about head covering there. Leave a comment or send me a message through the contact form. You can also comment on this video and just tell me a little bit about your head covering journey and what it's been like for you. Have you felt lonely? Have you felt frustrated? Have you felt like people think you're weird? How have you dealt with that? So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. I hope this has been a help to you, especially to those of you who are in this head covering journey like me and just want to feel like you can connect with somebody who knows what you're going through. All right, that's it. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time.